So you talk about the role of the family storyteller as a purpose and a calling. How did you come to recognize that in yourself? And when did you realize it was bigger than just personal healing?
I've always been doing work with my family. There was also a lot of shame around it. There was a lot of feeling like everyone else is going away to college and becoming their own person. And I'm constantly having to go home and help. I'm constantly in some sort of crisis with my family. And, we were just talking about this before we started. There can be shame and confusion and a feeling of being really victimized when your family story is a big part of your life. And I don't know if when you were in the Philippines, did you feel there's like a big difference there with family staying together? And
Yes.
yeah,
Yes, it's a much more family-oriented culture in the Philippines. We're very relational as
yeah,
people, and sometimes people can confuse that with codependency and enmeshment, but
uh-huh,
actually it's really cultural. It can go to that
yeah,
end of the spectrum, obviously, and can become toxic, but I have to really be careful when I talk about that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
totally. There's other cultures, other countries, I think that is more understood. And you're right, it can border into enmeshment or toxicity or not feeling like you're living for yourself. You're only living for your family. But the truth is there's a deeply spiritual component and reason why we are living inside of the family system we are. And we've inherited something that we're here to bring forward. And so some of us, it's more obvious than others, and some of it requires more time with the family. There's just as many people who have a lot of pain that they don't have more connection with their family, that they don't feel that their family is interested. And I think that's more of a white American thing, I'm gonna
Yeah.
say, like that super all American sort of family where it's like no one quite is having any sort of deep connection with each other, but it's all a beautiful picture. There's a lot of pain to that as well. But
Yes.
when I was younger, I just felt like, when is my family gonna stop suffocating me? When
Mm,
does it stop being about my family? And that's kind of something that carried through my 20s into my 30s, even though I was clearly living a life that was initiated from my family story. I just saw so many other people who didn't feel the same pressure to have to be in touch with their mom, didn't feel the same pressure to come to family things. And it just made me feel like there was some way I wasn't evolving or
mm,
developing. And the only reason it was really tolerable is because my brother and I had always been best friends. And so him being part of that with me and managing the pressure of that. And I think there's also something to say, and maybe people will understand who have lost a parent. The pressure when you're a young person and one of your parents died, or even your parents are divorced and one of them is really struggling and has not repartnered, there's a lot of pressure to be there earlier than most people are feeling that pressure. At some point, most people feel that pressure to help their parents, but there's a different feeling of responsibility. And so I think I really struggled with that.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cycle Starters podcast. I'm your host, Heather Rebecca Wilson, and today I am so happy to be in conversation again with the amazing Alee Reina Hoffman, Akashic Records guide, healing artist, and transformational mentor about what it means to become the family storyteller without getting lost in the past. We're talking about how family history can shape a life, a body of work, and a calling. We'll explore the difference between being defined by inherited patterns and consciously integrating them. We'll also look at how grief, crisis, and unexpected change can become a portal for creative rebirth. Alee's recent memoir, Dark Times Catering, is a powerful anchor for this conversation, and I'm excited to share the nuance and tenderness she brings to lineage, healing, and storytelling. And stay with us until the end because I will be offering her a special mini galactic astrology reading, just a little window into what her chart suggests about the work she's here to do. So before we jump into our conversation, I have a favor to ask. If you are enjoying the content that we are creating here on the Cycle Starters podcast, please like and subscribe, comment, and share. It really supports the algorithm in getting our content in front of more viewers. Also, I've created a Substack, so please subscribe to the Cycle Architect. That's where I am sharing all of my musings and more in-depth articles about the folks that I'm interviewing on the podcast. So that's just a little bit of housekeeping. And without further ado, let's welcome Alee back to the show. Hi, gorgeous.
Hey there. Good to be here.
I'm so grateful to be in dialogue with you again today. I loved the first episode that we did together. I love your work. I love your energy. How have you been since we were on the show? Like over a
Thank
year ago.
you. Yeah, it was just coming to mind too how special it is to be in these conversations around lineage and ancestry, because I think about when we met living in Venice and the circles you were creating at that time for women to really feel pride and connection to their roots. How I was just about to go into this whole cycle that I've been in, that I wrote the book about. Books that we're going to talk about that I wrote starts in Venice. Part of the cover is about Venice. And so, yeah, I was just thinking about how happy I am to be connected on this. Since we last talked, I closed one cycle, which when we were last talking about family and the Akashic Records, I was in the middle of finishing this book and I was helping my mom move to Florida and really sell the family home and create sort of the next chapter for my mom. And there's probably some people who are listening who can relate. Sometimes there's been loss in your family where you expect that to be a journey several of you are doing together. So my dad and my brother passed away, which we'll talk a little bit about. And sometimes when you're here to be the family storyteller, it turns out you're the one who's going to finish the earthly story, right? And so I've really been on that journey of being the one who's like, I don't know, I don't mean to sound morbid, but I do want to share it because I think actually there's some people in my group right now, they're realizing like I'm the one stewarding everyone into their aging or into their passing. I'm the one who's going to close up the family, And if my mom hears this, I'm not saying that's happening to you right now. But, that's kind of been my journey is I was closing up the family home and supporting my mom into her next chapter as she's in her 70s, and kind of like stewarding her into that experience. And then I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, and that's been sort of my journey into coming back into my life. But, the storytelling always continues because I launched the book here. I've been doing a lot of work around supporting people to really understand the story they're telling and the story they come from. So I've been working with my book, Dark Times Catering. And then I have a book club coaching circle called Dark Times Bring Light. And it's a play on the words of the book. It's also supporting people to go into some of the dark times they've experienced. And I just think collectively, we're going through dark time. And it's a real thing to really have faith and understand how you're here to bring the light and where to find that light. So that's what I've been up to. And there's a lot more karmic stuff, and maybe we'll get into it. I've been going through a lot of karmic healing around blood and my bloodline as well. So that's it in a
Well,
nutshell.
thank you.
Not really a nutshell.
Well, before we jump into this fantastic book that you've written and the work you're doing around the book, will
Yeah.
you remind our viewers of your blood ancestry, where
Yeah.
you come from? Yeah.
Yeah. So on my mom's side, Ashkenazi Jewish. So her whole ancestry were Russian Jewish people. My great grandparents came from Russia. So that's my name, Alexandra. And then on my dad's side, his father was German Swiss. So that is my last name, Hoffman. And my grandmother was Sicilian and her family was the Reina. So that's actually why my name is Alexandra Reina Hoffman. It kind of hits all three ancestry bloodlines, which maybe should have been a foreshadowing of how much family work I was going to do. They're all in there. They all got into my name. So,
They are, and then my mom's name is Reina, so
oh, is
yeah,
it
I love that
cool?
connection. Well,
Yeah.
so I mean, where did we begin? The
I
first thing
know.
I want to
I
ask you,
know.
though, is about the title of this book. How did
Yeah.
you decide on this title?
Yeah. So Dark Times Catering, it was sort of a jokey title for a while, was Dark Arts Catering, and it was gonna be just the working title while I figured out what the name of the book was, and the reason it's called that is because my mom and I have done so many memorials, so many dinners and gatherings and events and yeah, not just funerals, but all sorts of memorial celebration of life experiences. And we've done it so much and we do it so well that someone had said to my mom, the two of you should really do this professionally. And she had jokingly said, yeah, you can call us the Dark Arts Caterers. And, just kind of a joke. And so that was the working title of the book. And then I changed it from dark arts because I am a spiritual practitioner. And I think, like, even though I thought that was funny, it was probably gonna give people the wrong idea of what's going on here, where I don't work in the dark arts. So we changed it to Dark Times, and then as time went on, I realized, oh, that's just the name of the book. It's Dark Times Catering, and really what it's about is how to find nourishment during the dark times of life. The reason we've been able to survive as humanity for this long is because we had to find ways to be nourished to get through things. And one way is food. There's other types of connection, spiritual, emotional, literal storytelling is one of the ways of nourishment. And so over time, I think it's kind of like when you get a tattoo and you think you understand why you got the tattoo. And then over the years, many people realize there's more to the story. This title was a kind of a joke, and then I changed it to Dark Times to not freak out people with the dark arts, and then it's just made more and more sense, and it's expanded, and it's interesting, a lot of people who have read the book will tell me, "Oh, I'm having a Dark Times catering moment." Some sort of crisis happened and I'm gathering everyone around the table, or some sort of beautiful moment of connection or something even with food happens and people are kind of able to recognize, oh, this is dark times catering. I'm living the experience of being a dark times caterer, and I'm serving up something so that we can get through this time.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so I have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
So you talk about the role of the family storyteller as a purpose and a calling. How did you come to recognize that in yourself? And when did you realize it was bigger than just personal healing?
Yeah, I think it's something that's really just landed to this level in the last couple of years, but it's really like I had, a very significant family experience. And I've worked with all sorts of people. Some people are very close to their family, some people aren't, people feel very disconnected. And I think any role can be challenging and has its thing you need to work through. But my family was just like a very significant group of people. There's just a lot of creativity, a lot of charisma, a lot of deep presence. And so my family just was a strong field. I think most people who are listening probably understand energy field. My family just had a strong field. And we also went through a lot of illness during my formative years. So we grew up in a household where it was my parents and my grandmother and my brother and I. And my grandfather, I think I talked about this on the last show, like my grandfather had died in his 30s. So there had been this big loss that kind of was always sort of felt in the household with the way it had impacted my parents, my uncles, my grandmother who lived with us. And then my brother, when we were teenagers, had cancer. And then while we were going through that experience, right when he went into a remission and was back at college, when I was a senior in high school, my dad was diagnosed with cancer. And there may be people who can relate to this. Sometimes you have these family illnesses or crises that everyone sort of has to band together. And we already had that sort of family. So I feel like I was very influenced by the family I came from early on. And my dad was a musician and I loved music and writing and photography was kind of my escape when everybody was sick, because pretty much everyone was sick my whole college and high school and college years. And so I went to college for music journalism, and this was all happening at the same time. And my dad died while I was there, and I was home for his death, and it was a deeply spiritual experience. And I realized like I was no longer interested in moving forward on the music industry path because that really had been my journey with my dad. And it was hard to find the same impact in it with him not there. And I had had such a profound experience of his cancer journey with my brother and my mother and I. And my dad's journey is where we sort of went into more of the holistic stuff and brought more spirituality into the experience. And so, yeah, my brother and I had been so profoundly impacted by that. And so when my dad died, my brother was very clear. He was in his 20s. He had now survived cancer twice and had just walked that journey with my dad. And so he was really clear like, oh, we're here to be healers and disruptors in healthcare. And so nothing felt more compelling than following my older brother into that. And so really my whole story has been being part of the family, and I went to school for journalism and music, so there was always this storytelling component to it. But yeah, I so my brother and I in our early 20s started really doing all this work to learn about healing and really trying to prevent this ever happening again. There was some part of us that felt if we had known enough, maybe our dad wouldn't have died. And I think on a deeper level that I wasn't able to really get in touch with as much until my brother died. It was like trying to prevent my brother from dying. So that was kind of the family lineage that launched me into having my whole adult life be in the healing arts. And at the same time, I was always trying to escape it. So even though it's so clear from my origin story I just shared, I've always been doing work with my family. There was also a lot of shame around it. There was a lot of feeling like everyone else is going away to college and becoming their own person. And I'm constantly having to go home and help. I'm constantly in some sort of crisis with my family. And, we were just talking about this before we started. There can be shame and confusion and a feeling of being really victimized when your family story is a big part of your life. Because other cultures, and I don't know if when you were in the Philippines, did you feel there's like a big difference there with family staying together? And
Yes.
yeah,
Yes, it's a much more family-oriented culture in the Philippines. We're very relational as
yeah,
people, and sometimes people can confuse that with codependency and enmeshment, but
uh-huh,
actually it's it's really cultural. It can go to that
yeah.
end of the spectrum, obviously, and can become toxic, but I have to really be careful when I talk about that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Totally. I'm smiling because I've told you that my Jewish grandmother's sister married a Filipino man. And so I have a
Yes.
whole contingency of Filipino family, and it's like, yeah, the Jews and the Filipinos, I think there's a similar thread there. Yeah, so right, there's other cultures, other countries I think that is more understood, and you're right, it can border into enmeshment or toxicity or not feeling like you're living for yourself, you're only living for your family. But the truth is there's a deeply spiritual component and reason why we are living inside of the family system we are. And we've inherited something that we're here to bring forward. And so some of us it's more obvious than others, and some of it requires more time with the family. There's just as many people who have a lot of pain that they don't have more connection with their family, that they don't feel that their family is interested. And I think that's kind of more of a white American thing, I'm gonna
Yeah.
say, like, just that kind of, that super all-American sort of family where it's like no one quite is having any sort of deep connection with each other, but it's all a beautiful picture. There's a lot of pain to that as well. But
Yes.
when I was younger, I just felt like, when is my family gonna stop suffocating me? When
Mm,
does it stop being about my family? And that's kind of something that I carried through my 20s into my 30s, even though I was clearly living a life that was initiated from my family story. I just saw so many other people who didn't feel the same pressure to have to be in touch with their mom, didn't feel the same pressure to come to family things. And it's just made me feel like there was some way I wasn't evolving or
mm,
developing. And the only reason it was really tolerable is because my brother and I had always been best friends. And so him being part of that with me and managing the pressure of that. And I think there's also something to say, and maybe people will understand who have lost a parent, the pressure when you're a young person and one of your parents died, or even your parents are divorced and one of them is really struggling and has not repartnered, there's a lot of pressure to be there earlier than most people are feeling that pressure. At some point, most people feel that pressure to help their parents, but there's a different feeling of responsibility. And so I think I really struggled with that. So I was doing all this family oriented stuff, but also struggling with that. And I think there's something interesting to say about that, because I think a lot of people who actually their karma and their dharma has to do with family will find themselves in a lot of cult like communities and
Mhm.
organizations because they feel so strongly there's this family dynamic they're here to work out, and they don't feel the approval for it to be done inside of their own family, and sometimes it's not possible. I understand that. But I feel like sometimes you can feel this family energy that you're trying to work out, and it doesn't feel like we're supposed to do it with our family of origin, especially in America. And so suddenly it's like, wait, these people are never seeing their siblings or their parents, but they're basically treating these people like their family, create these really toxic dynamics. And the spiritual growth and personal growth communities are, we know this is very known at this point. I don't think I'm saying something people haven't heard. There's many documentaries
Yeah.
of many things that I've participated in on Netflix and HBO at this time. But I feel like I sort of went down that path because I could feel this family thing, but I also felt misunderstood and I didn't want to feel so connected to my family. So I would kind of like go into these very cult like sort of communities and learning opportunities. And I feel like that's actually a step on the path for many
Mhm.
people who have deep family storyteller karma, is like you avoid it because there's not a lot of approval for that, especially when you're younger, but then you're just working it out in these really costly ways, financially and energetically.
Your memoir, right, that you've just
Mhm.
written, Dark Times Catering, that came out of your own family story.
Yeah,
I think people would be curious to know what it was like to take something so intimate and then
totally.
offer it to the world. Can you tell us about that?
Totally. So, yeah, that's the first half of it, and I wanted to share all of that before we talk about the book because I wanna really speak to the person that can feel they care about their family, they have something they're carrying forward, they may feel like they have a lot of patterns they inherited that they feel trapped in, and I just wanna say that is so part of the journey to feel resistance. Here I am now, I have a book and a book club around being this close to my family, right? And I just wanna really land for people how much I was in resistance to that and how painful that can be. So, besides my brother and I, the rest of our family, there's been a lot of trauma and loss, as there is in many families, and there was a lot of secrecy. Most of us inherited secrecy. While we're the family storyteller, we're also coming from a lot of timelines where people didn't share openly what was
Right.
going on, right? There's been a lot of abuse and a lot of things that have happened in people's families that we are now just in the generations where people are doing that work. And that's also why so many of us have such a big karma around family and telling the story, is so many people didn't get to tell it. And so I came from family where it was sort of like, let's not get so into that, right? A lot of the family that's still living. And so I also think that's why my brother and I felt so drawn to be out in the world doing this work, because we didn't know always how to bring it back in. And then 7 years ago this month, my brother unexpectedly passed away. And there's a family karmic component to that. There was a misdiagnosed heart condition. He died at the same age as my grandfather, who died in his 30s. There was a big element of suddenly my partner in this that sort of helped me handle having so much around our family was gone. And so I was taken out of my independent Venice lifestyle where I got a lot of understanding and approval of who I was, and had to come back to a family that I felt like didn't really understand how much I was doing for them.
Mhm.
There can also be a lot of resentment when you're the family storyteller
Yeah.
and you're getting the stories out of the tissue and out of the epigenetics, and you're also getting the gifts out into the world that people have, because a lot of times people don't get the gifts because there's too much pain wrapped around the gift. So if you're not willing to unwrap the pain, you never get the gift. And
100%.
so it's like, I mean, many people in my family line could have monetized their, like they have my gift, but it's like there was so much pain that I had to unwrap first. And I also had to get into approval of sharing a lot of things
Mhm.
that had never been shared. Anyway, I had to go back to my family 7 years ago, and everyone I felt like really understood me was gone. And, my mom and I had a hard time because we had been caregivers together and experienced it very different ways, right? We were the dark times caterers together. And I just sort of knew that the book was coming. And then 2 nights before my brother died, I had gone into ceremony. I had started to feel so depressed and like I didn't want to live anymore. And what I understood now is part of it was, I won't take us down this whole thread, but I was living in a beach house with mold, and it was really affecting my cognition. So one of the signs of mold is depression. The other piece of it is I could feel him leaving, right? And so leading up
Yeah.
to his passing, it was not mine to stop or control. It's part of also being the storyteller of the family, is you're being a witness to everybody's destiny. And it can be hard to connect with your family when you think your job is to change anyone's destiny.
Mm,
So,
yeah.
and I really want to land that, because that's part of why we don't want this role when we can feel it's ours, because I should have been able to save my dad, right? I should have been able to protect my brother. Like, that's just mine, but it's like everyone has their thing of, I need this family member to be different. I need, this thing to happen. And so part of being the storyteller is really getting clear and accurate with your story of being in this family, and then learning how to honor the story others are here to write. Others are here to live out. And so I had to really honor the story my brother was here to live out, the story my whole family was here to live out. And I came back, and the 2 nights before Gabe died, I went into this deep shamanic ceremony, and I did hear, like, I'm here to write a book. And the day he died, I actually went into connection with a healer we both worked with, and that came through again. And this is also why I created the group Dark Times Bring Light. Some things happen where the only way to move forward is we have to turn them into something outside of ourselves. And that's why you see so many people who have a tragic loss, or they lose a child and they create a nonprofit. There's things that happen to us where we have to do something with it, or
Mhm.
we don't, or we don't survive. I think it takes a good amount of time to work with the offering so that it's more about the service and the purpose and being the storyteller, more than having a place to distract ourselves or having a place to put the pain. So there, that even being a storyteller and creating an offering from something hard that happens, we could do a whole podcast on that, because there's a period of time for you and the catharsis. Then if we're going to create something that's of service, it can't just be about your catharsis. And so this book took me 4 years to write. I thought it was going to happen much sooner, but it took a long time to process so I could be a clear, accurate narrator, and I could be ready to share freely and to share in a way that I feel was respectful to the rest of the family. And so actually, when I did an opening ceremony for the book, I had my mom come on, because a lot of people were moved by what I share in the book, and by the idea of, like, I don't know how to share my medicine if it involves my family. It feels like I have to wait until everyone dies, or it
Mhm.
feels
Yeah.
like I can't really share what's mine. And what I've found is, as I said, there's this whole period of alchemy and catharsis and clearing and releasing. And what you'll find is you don't need to share everything you think you need to share to be the family storyteller. There is a lot I could have put in this book. There was a lot that was originally in this book that actually is not necessary to be the storyteller, and is for a different, more private, grid aspect of my life. We don't need to exploit ourselves or others to be the family storyteller, but we may need to write it out and talk about it and process it, and then we'll know what we're actually here to share. And my brother had been very private, and so I had to really work out, like, I do speak about his death, I speak about the ceremony I did with our family and with his body before he was cremated. And I really get in there, because I also really wanted people to have a felt experience if they have never seen something like what they've experienced in writing before, or if they've had a lot of anxiety about what it's going to be like to steward someone they love, to be there at the end of their story. So it was important to me to share some of those details, but I worked for a long time to make sure they felt honoring and respectful. I had my mom read the whole thing before I put anything out. And I also had to know that my brother felt a lot of pressure to not worry the family and to not worry other people. And he had this big career helping and healing so many people. And so some of his privacy and secrecy was protecting something that was frightening him. And so I had to also know, sometimes as the family storyteller, we have to also be able to know that that element is over now. That part doesn't need to be hidden. It had to do with the wounding that was happening during that lifetime. This part isn't necessary to share. And so I guess what I would say is there's a big journey of discernment in order to know what's right to share. There may be some people who know us who think I haven't gotten that feedback, but there may be people who think I shared too much. You can't also decide that everyone needs to understand you to be the family
Right.
storyteller.
Yeah.
You got to let go. Yeah, Heather. And I work with so many people now that are realizing they're the family storyteller and feel really misunderstood by people who think they're sharing too much or they're doing too much or they're codependent or they're this and that. And not everyone understands this dharma. And you have to understand that. But what my mom said is like she was surprised. She's like, you don't know what you can handle until you're experiencing it. And the
Right.
worst thing that could have ever happened to me already happened. And whatever you needed to do, like she's also here to help witness my story. I'm witnessing and stewarding her. She's witnessing and stewarding me. And it was like she knew I needed to do this. And she didn't realize that she was capable after being so private for so long of having her story out in this way, but it turned out she was. But we had to really be in close connection through it. And it's a deeper process and you have to get really clear that there's not a agenda that you're hiding from yourself about why you're sharing what you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In the conversation that we were having before we started recording, I was sharing that my work is really focused on supporting the people who are towards the end of their ancestral healing journey and they've decided to not be a victim of their family story or family patterns and they're facing forward, right? They're starting new cycles. They got in their power around it. So I want to know, in your words, what would you say is the difference between a family storyteller and getting lost in the family story? And how do people
Yeah.
find that line?
I just feel such reverence. Like I just feel the pain of anyone who's meant to hear that question and how hard that is. And just how that feeling of feeling trapped, like I'm never going to get out of this. I'm just really sitting with that sensation because I guess it's because I don't think anyone gets to the part where you're inheriting the gifts and the purpose and the fulfillment without first feeling absolutely trapped.
Mhm.
And I feel like I could almost cry. I mean, I've certainly felt this way 2 days ago. I feel this way at different points, and I hold space for
Mhm.
a lot of people, but I'm really feeling like the collective, whoever's meant to hear this, I just am feeling their grief in this moment because I guess that's what I would first say is if you feel trapped or disempowered or only inherited the worst things and when does it get better? Why do other people in your family not have the health issue or not have the responsibility? There's different ways when you're here to be the storyteller and really, really understand. So part of being the storyteller is I'm here to really understand the family I came from.
Mhm.
And so it's like, why am I in some workshop having to understand this? My cousin's bawling out there having the time of their life, or my sibling, you know,
Right.
got married at 30 and has done their own thing. I guess I first want to say that you're not doing it wrong if you feel trapped or you feel stuck. But it's first coming into acceptance of, I actually really care,
Yeah.
even if I don't want to. I actually really care. I wish I could be like those people who don't care. And that was the thing I was tuning into before we started, is that the thing that was important to transmit today was permission to care. Permission. There's nothing wrong with you. You don't need to go to therapy because you care about your
Right.
family.
Yeah.
And, it can be hard because if you're not this role spiritually, a lot of people will not understand what's going on. And that doesn't mean you should give your life away to your family. I'm not saying to martyr yourself to your family, but we've got to just get into reality. Everyone has something that takes more of their time and energy and resources than they wish it did. Everyone has a thing that it feels like they're working through for a long time. So if it's your family, then for someone else, it's something else, So I think it's first just coming into the reality of like, I care and I'm here to understand. I can't explain why my brother or my cousin or my whoever, my friend, my husband doesn't need to go so deeply into understanding the roots of their family. I'm not here on their ride. So it's first coming into the truth of that, coming into the acceptance of that, and then deciding how you want to do it. This is the truth. Do I want it to do it in a way that makes me feel victimized and where I say yes when I could actually say no and where I never leave my hometown? And, there's ways to do this that don't have to mean being suffocated. But I think the first part of learning how to do it in a way where you can find empowerment and freedom and enjoy it is coming into approval that that's you. If you're listening to this right now, like, that's me. I feel like both of us, right? We both had to come into this approval of that's my work. And then it can feel so isolating, but I'll just say the more I've come into approval and obviously done all this work around it, I just work with so many people who are in a situation that I thought was just me, especially since my
Mm.
brother died. And I'm like, "Oh my god, there's so many people who hold this type of dharma." And I feel like, wow, it's very fulfilling to be the person to hold space. Sometimes as healers, we have to be the thing we haven't had before. We have to become the thing we wish we had.
Yes. Yes.
It's part of the deal. And I'm like,
I
wow,
agree.
it's pretty amazing. I'm sitting with people in situations that like I felt so alone in when I went through them, even like 5 years ago. Like it's an amazing experience. I just was thinking this morning, someone I have worked with and know dearly reached out to me to say their parent had passed. And they're not a healer or a coach or a therapist or whatever, but they have been the family storyteller. Their mother had some sort of dementia for a long time. Their mother had all this amazing heritage and lineage and gifts she had given the family that she hasn't been able to share for a long time. And this person has been the one to bring out all of her decorations and share her recipes and keep all of these things from her childhood intact and share them with children in her life. And she's done this beautiful, beautiful job of continuing her mom's story, even while her mom's been on earth, in a way that has been so moving to me, and just happened to reach out to me today. And I was like, wow, so interesting. We're doing this podcast today because it doesn't have to necessarily be about death, but there is an element of death to this, because if you're the one telling the story, it's because someone else is not, right? And someone else can't or is not. And I was just like, wow, that is another example of, she has a totally different life and career, but she is a family storyteller. She has carried on the traditions in the way she's here to do it. So it's cool.
Well, yeah, it is cool. I mean, speaking of purpose, I really would love to transition this conversation to some galactic astrology.
Yes. Yeah.
And last year, I got certified in quantum soul guidance galactic astrology just because something inside of me was like, I need to expand the story beyond my blood ancestors to my star ancestors. And so what I learned is that much of our ancestral trauma, these repeating patterns that we can experience, they're actually echoes of galactic traumas.
Mm.
And what galactic astrology does is that it adds an outer layer of super cosmic points, fixed stars, um, black holes, nebulas to the traditional tropical Western astrology chart. And it speaks to our soul's journey over eons of time. So we're looking at past lives not only on Earth, but we're looking at past lives that are off planet. So there's our assignment in this life, but there's also our soul's journey, right? What is our soul learning over many, many lifetimes? And so I wanted to share with you what I found in your galactic chart. And there was so much there. We're just going to scratch the surface, but I wanted to share some highlights with you.
Wow. That
Are
is,
you ready?
yeah, that is unbelievable. What you just described. I can't wait to hear about it. Thank
Okay,
you
well,
so
get
much.
ready. Oh, you're so welcome. This is
Yeah.
like my favorite thing to do. So, the galactic signatures in your chart, they beautifully mirror the work that you're already doing in the world. So, one of the most powerful aspects that I found was that your south node, which is your past lives, right? Where you're coming from, also the lower expressions of what you're shedding. Your south node and your Uranus, which is how you stand out, where you're going to be doing your own thing in this life. They're both in Sagittarius in the 10th house, and they are conjunct the Great Attractor, which is a mysterious magnetic point in the cosmos that quite literally pulls galaxies towards it. So it's a gravitational anomaly. Astronomers are still studying it. But when it's activated in someone's chart like this, especially in the 10th house, which is what you're doing in public, so it's
Right.
around your contributions to the world, career sometimes, this creates a gravitational presence. And so people are drawn to you, not just because of what you do, but because of what you hold. And with your south node here, there's a sense that you've absolutely done this before. You carry deep soul memory around guiding others, holding big perspectives, and helping people make meaning out of chaos, which is like
Mm.
what you're doing with this book, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And with Uranus here as well, you're not here to do it in a conventional way. You're a visionary, you are a disruptor, and you bring insights that break patterns, right? That liberate people from old identities and invite them into something that's just more expansive and more true. Also, your midheaven, which is the top of the chart around your public path, your career, is in Sagittarius, right? The highest expression is
Yeah.
a spiritual teacher, by the way. It's conjunct the star Alpha Centauri. And Alpha Centauri is our closest neighboring star system, and it carries a bridge like quality connecting worlds. And so, with this on your midheaven, your work naturally becomes a bridge between realms, between grief and beauty, between what was and what can be, between the seen and the unseen. So, you help people cross thresholds. And then you've got your Pluto. It represents what you don't necessarily want people to see, but it's basically where you have to die in order to be reborn. It's a
Mm.
generational planet. So your Pluto is in the sign of Scorpio, fixed
Okay.
water, in the 8th house, and it's conjunct the Shapley attractor. And this is incredibly profound. So, the Shapley attractor is one of the most powerful forces we know of. It pulls everything toward deeper truth. So, it's another gravitational anomaly. And with Pluto here in this 8th house of transformation and intimacy and rebirth, you carry this signature of deep alchemy, and you don't shy away from the underworld. You know how to move through it.
Yeah.
And more than that, you help others transform within it. And so I think this is the signature of someone who can sit with grief, crisis, and profound change, and then help others find meaning, power, and even beauty on the other side. And finally, your Chiron in Taurus, I also have Chiron in Taurus, in the 3rd house is conjunct both Perseus Algol and Pleiades Alcyone.
Mm.
And this speaks to your voice and your storytelling. So, Chiron, as you know, is the wounded healer. It's in the 3rd house. And this is pointing to the power of sharing your story. Algol brings intensity and truth. an ability to speak what others may fear to say. And Alcyone in the Pleiades adds a layer of emotional depth, sensitivity, and connection to collective feeling. And so, altogether, I feel like this suggests that your words, your writing, your storytelling, your expression are medicine. And you don't just tell stories, you transform through them. You give language to experiences that can feel unspeakable, and in doing so, you create spaces for healing. And just when looking at your chart as a whole, I see someone who is here to bridge worlds, to hold transformation, and to guide others through the most profound thresholds of their lives. And your presence is super magnetic. Your perspective is expansive, and your ability to alchemize experience into meaning is a true gift. So you don't just help people heal, you help them recreate themselves on the other side of what they've lived through. And that is incredibly powerful. So I
Wow.
know that was a lot. How is this landing? How is this washing all over you?
Well, it's so intricate. I can see just the study you've done to be able to translate. If I can feel energetically just how much dense material you are going in and finding these really beautiful, intricate galactic threads and being able to presence it into this timeline. All of it really resonated, but bringing words to the unspeakable really lands with me. A lot of this also kind of speaks to translating the Akashic Records the way I do into art and writing and the sessions and everything. And it's just like a lot of that, it does not have words. It's like creating words for things that are like blocks of energy.
Hmm.
And also I sit with people around stuff that has been unspeakable, moments in their life that they haven't had words for. Sometimes it's painful, and that's why. But that I loved everything, but something about that really landed of bringing words to things that have been unspeakable. And I guess that to me ties into what we're doing today together. I wonder how often you see that in the chart of a family storyteller.
Hmm.
Seems like one
My
of the
gosh.
marks of one, I would think.
Yeah. I mean, listen, your Pluto on the Shapley attractor is exact. It's right on it. An exact conjunction. And just to let you know, the Shapley attractor is associated with unprecedented influence behind the scenes. So there are quite a few global political leaders that have an activation to Shapley in their chart. Hillary Clinton is one of them. So it's a
Love.
really, really, really powerful signature. And
Wow.
I wasn't surprised at all to see it in your galactic report. You're multi-galactic. We all are. But I thought it was just so interesting to see also that
Yeah.
your Chiron is conjunct the Pleiades. So
Well,
cool.
I was actually, I was gonna say it was interesting because when I really opened to the Akashic Records and I guess like 14 years ago, something really cracked into like, oh, this is how I'm doing it. I've been doing this for a long time, but it was like, this is how. The big opening I had was channeling the Pleiadians, like from
Oh
so
my gosh.
yeah, I
I didn't
wasn't
even
sure.
know this.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that would be connected, and I didn't know what the Pleiadians were, but well, a whole other podcast, I had this interesting relationship with someone, and we really cracked each other open spiritually, and I was channeling, and he understood what I was channeling, you know? And so that's when I really started to learn about the Pleiadians, and, you know, it's interesting, my experience with the Pleiadians is like the family village, that
Mm,
everyone is family.
yeah.
And, when you
Mhm.
are from the Pleiades, how painful it can be to be part of these things that are create such separation as
Yes.
humans because they are so all one. And,
Yes.
a big opening of my family healing and trauma was from that star collective, I guess, right? The Pleiades. So I was just wanting to tell you that because I don't know how that translates to you, but I had a very big awakening from that realm, I guess, is what I'm gonna say.
Thank you for sharing that. That is amazing. I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah,
So
it's a little something in the
we're gonna
bag.
do another podcast episode on that, please.
Okay,
Please, please,
yeah.
please. That would be so cool. Thank you for letting me do that. You know, it's a
Yeah,
really intimate thing to look at someone's chart, and I know that I've read
totally.
your chart before, like we talked about your sun, moon, and rising sign, but this was super fun. So thank you for being
Cool.
open to it.
what an amazing next level for people who love astrology. And I just feel like there's so many echoes. It just helps affirm, 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 starting from maybe closer to Earth into the galactic. It's like this huge thread of really helping you land what you're seeing in the chart.
I'm loving it. I'm doing my purpose for sure. This is my next level work as a cycle breaker, a cycle starter.
Yeah.
Well, so I want to know now, what are you working on that you're super excited about that you can share with the community? You've got stuff going on with the book. I understand you
Yeah.
have a book club. So is that
Yeah.
restarting?
One of the things I'm most excited about right now is I'm going to continue to work with Dark Times Catering, this book, and I am doing a book club. It's basically an Akashic activation circle and a book club. And so we work with the frequencies of the book and the themes, and we work with the Akasha and then coaching, discussion. And I was just going to do it for the winter. And then I just realized, sort of like any story or process, it's great to get an experience in every season because
Mhm.
it's not just all winter or spring or summer or fall. The magic is when we go through a process in sort of kind of like with astrology, right? Like seeing the full cycle of something, the full return of something. So I'm really excited about that. The next version of this opens in May, and then the version after that will be fall into winter. I do my private work with people, but I'm letting this book take me on a journey this year and mentor me the way I think the stars and planets mentor you and the
Yep.
Akasha mentors me. But now it's like the book is mentoring me. And I think the next part of the book that has to do with the family story is reclamation of sex, love, romance, intimacy. That seems to be the part I'm journeying right now. And
Mhm.
I've had all this stuff going on with my uterus and fibroids and, another podcast, but
Yeah.
it feels very connected to like, family and what I've been holding in the
Oh,
womb and all the blood
100%.
that I've
Yeah.
been bleeding. And so that's kind of like the big things going on for me right now is like, I think I'm landing the next segment I'll be a storyteller of. I'm deep in it though. But, that's how I felt about what's in this book. It was like I was never going to get out of that. So, yeah, I'm kind of doing that and then I'm letting the book take whoever's meant to be part of this on the journey and it's a great intimate group experience. That's what I'm doing.
Amazing. So if people want to buy the book, if they
Yeah.
want to join the book club, where should they go?
Well, we can maybe put a link if you're
Yeah,
open to it.
of
People
course.
can find me on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and all those sort of things at Alee Reina,
Mhm.
Aleereina. And then it has links to more information on the book club and more information on, if they want to talk to me about anything. And also the book, I have a sales page, but you can really get it anywhere like Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Basically, you can get it on Kindle. If you type in Dark Times Catering, your bookseller likely has it. But, online, pretty much anywhere online, you can buy the book right now.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. So I asked you this question already uh, on our first conversation on the podcast. And I'm going to ask you again because maybe something's
Okay.
changed now that the book's been published and you've done the book club. What are the new cycles that you're starting in your lineages?
Yeah, this feels like my new cycle is and this is the healing process I'm actively in with my womb is no more over giving and no more over
Mm,
holding. I can
yeah.
care without carrying the whole thing.
Mm,
So and that's my new cycle is the women of our lineage have had to carry and hold and give more than they had to give, but figured it out. And it's like, it's okay. I had to dip into that. We had to do a little dip into that experience, but I'm really ready to start a cycle of just lots of reception, support, prosperity, and also falling in love again. The new cycle of falling in love with life and with someone, with a person, falling in love with life again, even after hard times. That feels like the cycle my body is creating right now. Yeah.
beautiful.
Thank you. Thanks
You
for
deserve
asking.
it. Of course. And I am holding the vision of that for you.
Thank you.
I just love your energy so much. Thank
Um,
you so much for being on the show again. And I'm serious about doing another episode
yeah,
about your experience with the Pleiadians. That would be
please. We love
so
them.
freaking cool. Yeah. So we'll talk
Cool.
about that offline. But just congratulations again on the
Thank
book.
you. Thank you.
I know that that was a huge task,
Yeah.
and you're not writing about superficial things. This was a
No.
whole journey, and the journey continues with it.
Yeah. And it's like how to have fun during it. And this is the
Yeah.
thing I just want to leave it on is it gets to be fun. It's hard, but it also gets to be fun. Like this book, and I kind of heard that in how you shared my chart too. It's like, I'm not here to be the Grim Reaper. It's like we
No.
got to have a laugh. And
Yes.
I tried to bring a lot of humor into the book, and I had to be ready for it to be truly funny and not bypassing funny.
Right.
Right. So, yeah, I also want to just leave that with anyone who felt themselves in this conversation is it is hard to have this role, and it's fulfilling and special and chosen, and it gets to be funny and fun as well. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
This
Thank you for
is
creating the space.
such a treat. Such a treat. No problem. All right. Well, everyone, take care, and we will see you next time on the Cycle Starters podcast. Thanks, Allie. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye.